I think one of the biggest concerns is the issue about what the REDD mechanism will be about. The developing countries are not united in this. I mean, everybody agrees that there should be money, that there should be money for forest protection, for ensuring the forest degradation doesn't happen. But the concern is over what the approach ought to be. One group of developing countries is saying that it should be a fund-based approach, meaning that if you have the United Nations Fund, Climate Fund, that you would have a window for forest, and from that window, developing countries who are really having very good plans in terms of forest protection can use that money. There are a number of countries are prepared to go the market route, where forest will be in a market mechanism and to generate carbon credits and therefore be traded in the international market. So that's a very sticky issue. Developed countries are saying, look, okay, let's have a readiness phase. We can't agree to the full REDD scheme, but can we have some money for readiness projects? And what we as civil society are concerned about is that if it's a readiness phase for a market-based approach, then we would be opposed to it. But if it's a readiness phase for a fund-based approach where you respect indigenous people's rights, you sort out the tenure issues, that it's about forest protection, it's not about giving money to plantations and chop the forest and put plantations or have GMO trees. This is not what we want, and this is not what we believe should be the way forward. I'm from Friends of the Earth Malaysia as well. I work with indigenous peoples, and my organization does, and we are on the front line of fighting the timber tycoons and the degradation that's happening there. So it's not about money for the destroyers, but it's money for the protectors. And that's where I think it's not clear. There's no clarity.
Well, I understand that there's actually a few pilot projects in REDD already underway, and that people are being forced off. Indigenous peoples are being forced out of those areas, etc. And the custodians of these forests. And so the pilot projects don't seem to be working. So how is this being dealt with in terms of pilot projects and setting examples for the future?
That's why we are very concerned. In fact, it should not go on if it's not under the UNFCCC. So the principles and the safeguards is what's being negotiated here. If we don't have the right principles and we don't have the safeguards in place and you don't have the proper mechanism in place, then you will get a very bad outcome. So we see a lot of processes happening outside which we are not happy with at all. And these are not even under the UNFCCC at the moment. So they're going through the World Bank, the other bilateral initiatives, and there's a whole load of activity which is going on.
Because of the slow but important process of the UNFCCC, being a very dramatic process, with all the voices being heard, and the fact that there's all these pilot projects that are already starting, in terms of carbon trade, cap and trade, and carbon trading. So perhaps the market is already moving its armies forward in establishing these things, and is there not a risk that that'll so much will have been progressed that the voices will not be heard and real legislation will not be able to come into place?
No, that's a real issue, and that's really the fight at the national level. Like those of us who work in tropical forest countries, that's a big fight we're already having at the moment. And even our local communities don't even know that this whole thing is being, negotiated. We know of companies who are already going into their forests and saying, oh, we can give you some money for some kind of carbon credit. So the carbon cowboys and the whole, it's already happening, and this is really dangerous. Now the problem with that is that the only accountability there is with the forest peoples and the strong indigenous peoples movements and the civil societies to take their government to account. There's no other way for that. At the international process, what has to happen is you have to wait until you have the right framework before we go forward. And that's really how we feel. So we are completely opposed to all this money going through the bank and all these bilateral approaches which do not go the way that we want to go. And that's why you see even in Cancun, a strong indigenous mobilization, social movements are saying, reject REDD of this kind.